Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed at 1,000 subscribers. I'll be posting a special video. Jess lifted her glass and announced we finally had sex. My name is Adam. I am 29 years old. Every fork stopped halfway, like someone hit pause on the whole table. I knew right then this morning would not stay between us. She grinned over the rim and tapped her ring with one finger. First time after all these years, can you believe that? Her eyes scanned their faces, not mine, waiting for the reaction. I already felt my jaw lock while the first laugh slipped out. Her best friend leaned forward and bumped her shoulder with hers. So was it worth the wait or was it tragic? Jess laughed too quickly, that sharp laugh she uses when nervous. I watched her decide, something behind her eyes, before she answered. She turned back toward them and wagged her hand in the air. Let's just say the build-up was better than the execution. The table exploded, people repeating the word execution like a punchline. I felt my chest tighten because I was the thing executed. Someone asked if she meant bad awkward or bad selfish, voice playful. Jess tipped her head, pretending to weigh two invisible options. She shrugged and said she spent more time reassuring me than enjoying. A few faces flicked toward me, curious, embarrassed, already taking sides. My phone buzzed beside my plate, then again. I kept my hand on my thigh and tried to ignore it. Another vibration hit, then a third, steady as a heartbeat now. A weird dread spread, because I could guess where that rhythm started. I finally flipped the phone and saw our shared group chat. The preview showed my name followed by a row of crying emojis. Under it, another message previewed longer, cut off mid-sentence. My thumb hovered, then I opened it and felt the floor tilt. Her first message had been sent hours before this brunch started. She wrote that tonight was the big night, finally, after waiting. The next one landed half an hour before we even arrived. Update: I did it, wish I had not sat there flashing. I scrolled up and saw play-by-play lines from last night. Little time stamps, little reactions from her friends, my life narrated. They reacted with jokes, advice, even ratings, then more jokes. I had been asleep while my first time turned into content. Jess clinked her spoon against her glass again, demanding more attention. To new experiences and honest friendships, no matter how awkward they get. Her best friend raised her drink and repeated honest like a challenge. Everyone drank while I stared at my own reflection in the screen. I typed her name with shaking thumbs and asked her to stop. Across the table her phone lit up and she glanced down. She met my eyes once, then looked past me to her friends. Relax, he is fine, she said without even reading my text. My ears hummed while new messages stacked under the old ones. Her best friend sent a photo from across the table quick. Me in the background hunched, staring at my phone like evidence. A sticker landed under it, something laughing so hard it cried. One of the guys leaned over toward me with a crooked smile. Dude, performance anxiety is normal, nothing to be ashamed about. His hand tapped my shoulder, way too familiar for this moment. I pulled back, wondering which version of the story he already knew. Jess took a breath like she was about to soften everything. Instead she started describing me, not the night, just me. Sweet, very nervous, kind of overthinking every single move he made. They nodded like they were hearing a movie recap they had bought. Her best friend cut in and asked if I even asked her anything. Did he check in or just get lost in his own head? Jess paused, then shook her head just slightly, just enough. I felt the table tilt again, because silence now sounded like guilt. I pushed my chair back and it scraped louder than I wanted. Everyone looked up at once, some already smirking, some already pitying. I need a minute, I said, voice tighter than I planned. Jess blinked slow, like this interruption annoyed her more than the topic. In the hallway my pulse thudded against my throat with every step. I ducked near the restrooms, leaned against the wall, opened the chat. More lines had dropped while I walked away from that table. He's freaking out now, she wrote. I knew this brunch was risky. I remember staring at that sentence, wondering when I lost control. Last night I thought we crossed some big invisible milestone together. This morning I watched her turn that milestone into an ongoing joke. It felt like the real event was just starting and I was late. I locked my screen and walked back to the table. Every step felt deliberate, like I was walking into a hearing. Jess was mid-sentence, hands moving, everyone leaning toward her excitement. When they saw me, the whole conversation hiccuped and stalled hard. I slid into my chair without touching anything on the table. We need to step outside for a minute. See? My voice came out flatter than I expected, which helped. Jess blinked twice, checked her friends, then stared straight through me. Can this wait? She drummed her fingers near her plate. Her best friend watched me like she had courtside seats to drama. It really cannot, I answered, keeping my gaze locked on Jess. Inside, I already knew this was the moment everything tipped over. One of the guys gave a soft whistle and pushed his chair back. Give them space, he muttered, nudging the others with his elbow. The group tried to play it off with nervous jokes and sips. I watched Jess decide, jaw tight, thumb resting on her buzzing phone. She finally stood, scraping her chair just enough to draw attention. 2 minutes, she told the table like she was promising a performance. As we walked away, I saw a few heads dip toward their screens. Whatever happened next would not stay in that room for long. In the hallway, she crossed her arms and planted herself against the wall. Are you seriously dragging me out here over your ego? The words hit hard, not because they were harsh but prepared. She had lines ready, which meant she had imagined this exact scene. I held my phone up between us and opened the chat. You narrated last night like a live broadcast while I slept. Her eyes flicked down quick, then returned to my face. She had seen the messages, she just never expected me to. They were checking in on me, she answered, shoulders jerking once. I needed to vent somewhere or I would have exploded. I scrolled to the newest texts and tapped the latest one. Exploded is one thing, I said, mocking me in real time is another. She reached for the phone and I pulled it just out of reach. Do not turn this into some privacy invasion thing, she snapped. I laughed once sharp because that twist almost impressed me. You turned our bed into a group project and I am the assignment. Her jaw clenched at that, just a small twitch near the corner. They are my support system, she muttered, nails pressing into her arms. They care when something feels wrong and frustrating and weird. She was angry, but underneath it I heard something closer to panic. I lowered the screen and tried to keep my voice steady. You could have told me it felt wrong instead of entertaining them. She shook her head quick, like that thought was ridiculous. You were finally relaxed, she answered. I was not going to start a fight mid-attempt. That line lodged somewhere between my chest and throat and stayed there. Attempt not night, not memory, just a failed trial with data. I realized I was not dealing with a hurt partner right now. I was dealing with someone already turning our life into a story. I looked like an idiot back there, I told her. You framed me as clueless while your friends watched me react. A couple walked past us toward the restrooms and slowed down. They pretended not to listen, which only made me feel louder. Jess glanced toward the dining room entrance, then checked her watch. I cannot babysit your embarrassment today, she said, voice even again. I told the truth about how it felt for me last night. That confidence scared me more than any insult could have. I stepped closer, not enough to crowd her, just enough to center her. Your truth can be honest without being a performance, I replied. You left out anything that made you look controlling, and you know it. Her eyes narrowed at that word, like I had pressed a hidden bruise. What did I control exactly? She uncrossed her arms and spread her hands. You pushed for this timing, I answered. You pushed for the brunch reveal. Her mouth opened, then closed again, like she was choosing which part to defend. I knew there was a piece she did not want to touch yet. She settled on the easier point. I told you I felt weird waiting this long, she said. You kept talking about milestones and purity and deserving some big moment. She exhaled hard. I wanted to rip the bandage off and move on. Hearing my own words thrown back like that made my stomach lurch. Not because they were fabricated, but because of how they sounded here. Cold, one-sided, focused on some scoreboard I never meant to create. I realized how many late-night speeches I did not even remember fully. I never wanted you to feel cornered, I started, throat dry. She cut me off with a sharp wave of her hand. You did not listen when I said I was uneasy, you heard challenge. Her voice cracked on that last word, and I saw real hurt flicker. For a second, I almost dropped my frustration and just apologized. Then my screen lit up again in my palm with new notifications. More comments piled under the chat, including one from an unfamiliar number. The preview read, "How is it going? Did he freak out?" Jess saw the contact name and flinched before she could stop herself. It was not one of our usual friends, no picture, just initials. "You tell. D someone else too?" I asked, each word heavier than the last. Her silence answered faster than anything clever she could have crafted. "They know we were together for the first time," I pushed. "They know you were planning this brunch joke before I even woke up." Her shoulders dropped, the fight draining in a way that scared me. When people give up mid-argument, it usually means they decided earlier. "I needed opinions from people who are not biased toward you," she said. "Your family adores you, your coworkers worship you, your friends think you are perfect." Her hand trembled as she brushed hair behind her ear. I wanted someone to say, "I am not crazy for feeling disappointed." There it was, that word again, hanging between us like a verdict. If she felt cheated, I could work with that, listen, adjust. But she had not just shared that feeling, she built a case from it. And I could tell we were only at the opening statement. "My issue is not that you were upset," I answered slowly. "My issue is that you skipped talking to me and went public." She laughed, flat and humorless. "This is not public," she muttered. "You have no idea what public looks like, not yet." That last part landed with a weight she probably did not intend to show. Not yet, two words that hinted something bigger was already in motion. I stared at her, watching the way her fingers pinched the bridge of her nose. People do that when they already committed to a choice they regret. "We are leaving," I heard myself say, firmer now, done negotiating. "You can explain everything in the car away from that table." She hesitated a full 3 seconds, like she was calculating fallout. Then she nodded once short and followed me toward the exit. As we walked back through the dining area, conversations dipped. Her friends tracked us, eyes flicking between our faces and our plates. One of them mouthed something to Jess that I could not catch. Jess only lifted her phone slightly, a small promise that she would update them. At the front, the host glanced up, confused by our early departure. "We have to go," I told him, already reaching for my wallet. Jess touched his arm lightly. "Emergency came up," she murmured, face composed. Even now she managed the optics, while my hands shook over the card. Outside, the air hit like a reset I did not get to use. Cars rolled through the lot, doors slamming, people laughing, the usual soundtrack. None of it reached me because my whole focus narrowed to Jess. She stood a few steps away, phone face down, shoulders hunched. "I am not your villain," I told her quietly, no performance. "I am the person who trusted you enough to wait." She looked up, eyes glossy, but not from apology. "Then start acting like someone I can trust back," she answered. That line hurt more than any detail about last night ever could. Because beneath the anger, there was a truth I did not want. We had both walked into that bedroom carrying expectations that crushed us. And now out here in a parking lot, we were paying for all of them. I yanked the car door shut and my phone lit up. A new text banner slid across the screen with a link attached. It was from a coworker who never messages me on weekends. The preview read, "Dude, is this you?" followed by a shocked emoji. I tapped the link before the engine even started. A browser window opened on one of those advice boards. Headline about a fiance, first time and brutal disappointment glared up. My hands went weightless while I waited for the page to load. The post started with a long build-up about dating for years. Then it walked through a late night, finally ending in intimacy. Every detail matched our morning timeline and the brunch plan. She called me careful in public yet selfish when doors closed. My chest tightened at that word, selfish, because she knew its weight. Reading her write it for strangers felt worse than hearing it. She described me focusing on my own release and ignoring her cues. She claimed she froze and worried I would take it personally. I scrolled and saw the username she picked for herself. It did not contain her real name, but it fit her. The replies flooded in with theories, warnings, suggestions to cancel everything. Almost every comment assumed I was some manipulative, clueless partner. Someone asked if she had told me any of this clearly. Her answer sat there in a neat little paragraph. She wrote that she tried, that I brushed off her fears. She framed herself as trapped with a man obsessed with his image. Jess sat silent in the passenger seat, eyes on her lap. She must have known exactly which post I was staring at. "How long has this been up?" I asked, my voice thin. She did not look at me, just nudged the door with her foot. "It is anonymous." She spoke like that solved anything important. "No one will know it is you except our circle." That word "our" hit me harder than the actual accusations. Apparently our CI. Arkley now included experts who graded my bedroom performance. I checked the timestamp and felt my stomach twist. The first entry was not from this morning or last night. She had been updating this thread for weeks with small notes. Our private life was an ongoing series, and I never subscribed. "You built this story before we even slept together." My thumb hovered over earlier entries while my heart hammered. I watched her reactions as I scrolled higher up the page. Every flinch lined up with a paragraph that made me look worse. One older comment asked if she felt safe with me physically. Her reply sat beneath it with too many qualifiers and hints. She wrote that I had never hurt her but still scared her. According to her, I could turn cold if she disappointed me. That line cut through everything because it sounded calculated. Not just hurt, not just anger, but groundwork for something bigger. I realized she was not only complaining about one bad night. She was building a case in front of an audience that believed her. I turned the screen toward her so she had to see. "Is there anything in here you actually told me directly?" She finally met my eyes, jaw clenched, fingers curling around her seatbelt. "I tried 100 times," she answered. "You only heard compliments." I remembered encouragement, nervous jokes, small reassurances before last night. I did not remember any clear warning that she felt unsafe. That word alone changed how everyone in that thread viewed me. Once you plant that, no explanation really pulls it back. More notifications stacked at the top while we sat there. Family group alerts, individual texts, her friends tagging me in memes. I opened one from my sister because I could not ignore her. "Call me when you can," she wrote. "I am worried about Jess." A second message from her followed, almost immediately after the first. She asked if everything had gone too fast and left Jess shaken. So Jess had reached her before I even finished brushing my teeth. Everyone was being briefed while I stood in the dark. "You already spoke to my family," I said, grip tightening on the wheel. She stared out the windshield like she was answering someone else. "They needed to know I was not okay," she murmured. "They care about you." I had to explain why I was upset. "You explained it here first," I snapped, tapping the Reddit thread. "Then you tried it out on your friends like rehearsal." Each circle got a slightly harsher draft until I became a monster. I wondered how many more versions existed that I had not seen. She exhaled long and shaky, then rubbed her forehead slowly. "You are acting like I plotted something elaborate," she muttered. "I was scared this morning and I needed to process it." Her voice trembled on scared, but I could not tell what of. The honest part was that fear did not surprise me. We were both nervous last night, just in completely different ways. The shock came from how quickly fear turned into content. In that thread, our relationship felt like a failed experiment, not a life. I read one more comment and felt my face go hot. Someone suggested she postpone the wedding and move in with a friend. Another urged her to document everything in case things escalated later. They were preparing her for damage I had not even imagined. "If you thought I might hurt you, you should have left." My voice sounded strange to my own ears, thin yet sharp. She jerked her head toward me with something close to offense. "I never said you were violent," she replied, "just unpredictable when criticized." That answer landed somewhere between confession and excuse. Enough to worry strangers, vague enough to keep her hands clean. I saw how easy it would be for people to fill blanks. They would picture slammed doors and broken things, not a stunned silence in a car. I felt something shift in me during that realization. Up until then, I had been trying to salvage our status. Now I was just trying to protect myself from what she was shaping. The fiancé in her story was not somebody I recognized anymore. Take that down, I told her, staring straight ahead at nothing. You can be angry at me without trashing me for entertainment. She gave a small laugh that held no humor, only disbelief. You cannot control what I share about my own experiences, she answered. There it was, control, the word she had hung on my neck online. Out here she was using it to shut down any pushback. If I stayed quiet, her version ruled by default. If I pushed back, I proved her right in front of spectators. I started the engine and pulled out of the parking spot. She kept her phone in her hand, thumb moving steadily. I knew she was updating someone about this drive in real time. I just did not know which audience she considered most important now. I pulled into our spot and Jess unclipped her belt fast. Her hand was already on the handle before the car fully stopped. Wait, I said, fingers tightening around the steering wheel. If we go upstairs, we actually talk, not brief your audience. She froze for a heartbeat, then leaned back with a loud exhale. I am not going up with you right now. Her voice carried that flat decision tone I knew too well. I packed earlier, my bag is in Lauren's trunk. The word packed hit harder than anything posted online that morning. You plan to leave before we even sat down for breakfast. She stared straight ahead, mouth pressed into a hard line. I asked her for backup last night after you fell asleep. Another notification flashed across my screen from my family group. The preview showed my mother asking if everything was all right with us. Under it, my sister wrote that she was available if either needed. Jess glanced at the messages, then looked away like they were noise. What did you tell them? I asked, turning the volume in my voice down. She shifted in her seat, fingers fidgeting with the strap of her purse. That things were rough and I needed space before decisions got permanent. She checked her own screen. I did not call you dangerous if that is your worry. The way she framed it made any defense sound ridiculous. If I argued, I looked exactly like the guy her forum warned about. If I accepted it, her version hardened into fact everywhere it landed. That trap is easy to set and almost impossible to walk out of. My phone rang before I figured out what to answer. My sister's name filled the display with a vibrating insistence. Jess watched, waiting like the call was part of some experiment. I hit accept because ignoring it would only fuel whatever she described. Where are you? My sister asked, no greeting, just urgency. In the car, I answered, glancing at Jess with her. A pause stretched on the line, I could hear her inhale. Is she safe? She asked next, careful, precise, like each word mattered. That question knocked the breath out of me more than her tone. Yes, I said immediately, too quickly, hearing my own panic. My sister lowered her volume. She reached out, sounding terrified last night. The word snapped something in my chest I did not know existed. Jess watched my face change and bit her lower lip. What exactly did she say? I asked, already fearing the outline. Just that things escalated and she felt pushed past what she wanted. My sister hesitated. She did not give details, but she was shaking. I looked at Jess while my sister talked, searching for any shame. Jess looked back like we were both trapped in different movies. I did not force anything, I said into the phone, keeping steady. Nothing happened without her agreement, not 1 second of it. I am not accusing you, my sister answered, softer now. But you need to know how this looks from everyone else's angle. She cleared her throat. Mom is freaking out, Jess's parents too. That last part told me this was far beyond one anonymous post. Jess checked her own messages again, jaw tightening at something. Who is that? I asked, covering the speaker with my palm. She flashed the screen just enough for me to catch the contact. Her mom's name sat up top, followed by a line about staying with them. When were you planning to tell me you were moving in there? My voice went quieter, which somehow made it sharper. I needed a place where I am believed without debating every sentence. She opened the door a crack. I will swing by for clothes later. I uncovered the phone and stepped out of the car to breathe. My sister kept talking, asking if I had someone with me. Her questions had shifted from curiosity to something closer to screening. Whatever Jess had described, it painted me as unstable at best. You should write down your version while it is fresh, my sister added. The suggestion made my stomach sink because I knew that phrase. That is what you tell people after accidents or break-ins. That is not what you say after a disappointing night between engaged adults. Jess stood outside the car now, arms folded across her chest. She knew I could hear my sister's advice and did not flinch. If anything, she looked almost relieved that someone said it aloud. Like paperwork made this whole thing feel justified instead of cruel. I will call you back, I told my sister, voice drained. Before she could protest, I ended the call and pocketed the phone. Jess watched the movement like she was waiting for my next move. Everything between us had narrowed down to reaction and counterreaction. So now they think I am some sort of threat, I asked quietly. Jess's shoulders lifted, then lowered like she was bracing for impact. They think I am upset and they do not want it ignored. She tapped her foot against the pavement. Nobody used the word threat but you. That was the moment I realized how cleverly this had unfolded. She never had to say anything outright to make people speculate. Just enough hints, enough panic, enough trembling voice on phone calls. Everyone would fill in the blanks with the worst version imaginable. A message popped from an unknown number while we stood there. The preview showed a screenshot of another online discussion. Thought you should see this before it spreads, the text read. Under it, a link to a larger relationship community waited. I opened it while Jess watched, lips pressed tight. The post was longer than the one I saw earlier. Same anonymous account, more dramatic language, wider audience this time. She used phrases like emotional pressure and ignoring repeated no's. My chest actually hurt when I read that last part. We had stumbled through nerves and hesitation, but not like that. There had been doubts, pauses, checking in, awkward laughs, all clumsy. Seeing that rewritten into "he kept going" made my hands start to shake. You know that is not what happened, I said, lifting the screen. Her gaze flicked across the lines, then drifted away again. It felt like that to me, she answered, picking each syllable carefully. I said I was unsure, and you treated it like a hurdle. That was the first time she framed it as almost non-consensual. Not explicitly, not with legal terms, but close enough for strangers. Close enough that people reading would not wait for nuance. They would slide right into comments about lawyers and restraining orders. I am not staying engaged to someone who writes this about me. The words came out before I even decided to speak them. Her eyes widened for the first time all day, mouth opening. You would blow up our entire life over one bad night. Over one bad night and a sustained campaign, I answered. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears as I spoke. You are not just upset, you are recruiting witnesses for a story. The part that terrified me was how natural it looked for her. From the corner of my eye, I saw Lauren's car turn in. Jess's shoulders loosened when she noticed it, instant physical relief. Backup was arriving, which meant the conversation had an expiration timer. I had maybe 2 minutes before everything moved beyond joint control. Lauren stepped out briskly, keys swinging, eyes already assessing us. You ready? She asked Jess, glancing at the luggage in her trunk. Jess nodded and moved toward her without asking if I was okay. She had chosen her side, and it was not the one beside me. Lauren's gaze landed on me next, steady, almost investigative. You should talk to someone neutral, she told me, voice low. Not your mom, not mine, someone who does not think you're perfect. The implication sat between us. She did not trust me alone with the narrative. Jess lifted her bag, slung it over her shoulder, did not wobble. I will text you later about the apartment, she tossed over. Please do not show up unannounced, I need breathing room. She closed the distance to Lauren, and the two walked away together. Watching her get into that car felt final in a way. Not just a temporary cool-off, but the start of separate futures. I realized I was the only one still thinking in terms of repair. Everyone around her was already moving in crisis management mode. My phone buzzed again as their car pulled out of sight. This time it was my mother, not in the group thread. She asked if she could drop by the apartment to talk in person. Her timing scared me because I knew Jess had probably called her too. I drove back alone, knuckles tight on the steering wheel. Messages stacked faster than I could read them at stoplights. Coworkers sending laughing reactions to the anonymous story they assumed was mine. Relatives asking vague questions about postponing big plans for emotional health. By the time I reached the building, I felt stripped of privacy. My front door suddenly looked less like home and more like a stage. Every room inside contained pieces of both our lives mixed together. Each item now felt like potential evidence for whichever story won. I stepped inside and dropped my keys on the counter automatically. The silence hit in a way that actually made my ears ring. No Jess on the couch, no shoes by the entrance, nothing small. Just absence stretched over every familiar surface like a reminder. Before I could process, there was a sharp knock at the door. I half expected Lauren and Jess, ready for round two. Instead, my mother stood there, worry carved into her expression. She stepped in without waiting, eyes scanning my face for damage. "Tell me everything from your perspective," she said, sinking into a chair. Not accusing, not gentle, just serious in a way that unsettled me. I walked her through the order of the morning and the posts. I kept my voice even, explained the online commentary, the live group messages. When I finished, she stayed quiet for a few seconds thinking. "I heard something different from Jess last night," she admitted. She mentioned feeling cornered like back. G out would disappoint everyone. That wording matched enough of the post to make my throat tighten. "Do you believe her?" I asked, unable to keep the edge out. My mom held my gaze for a long beat, then shook her head slowly. "I believe both of you are scared and neither trusts the other." She sighed, but she is talking to a lot of people and that matters. The awful part was that my own parent had to consider two realities. The loyal part of her wanted to protect me from false narratives. The rational part knew how serious those allegations sounded on a screen. Both parts showed in her eyes, flickering back and forth like indecision. "You need your own record," she went on, leaning forward slightly. "Dates, messages, anything that shows you checked in with her." I knew she hated even saying that, but she forced it out. "This is not about winning, this is about not getting crushed by rumors." I knew she was right, which made me feel sick. I had never thought about documenting intimacy like a contract. But after seeing those posts, I understood why she pushed it. Reality does not matter much when everyone else only sees text. While we talked, my laptop chimed from the desk. A new email notification popped up from my direct supervisor. Subject line mentioned my name and online conduct concern. My stomach dropped as I opened it in front of my mother. Someone had shown him the anonymous forum entry and drawn connections. He wrote that there were whispers around the office about my relationship. He asked if everything was okay and if any boundaries had been crossed. He also reminded me about company policies on harassment and public image. My mother read over my shoulder, one hand covering her mouth. "This is spreading faster than I thought," she whispered. Words on a random site had now reached my job. It was no longer just messy romance, it threatened my livelihood. I closed the laptop and rubbed my face with both hands. I cannot keep doing damage control while she adds new chapters. Saying it out loud made something inside me finally click. I was reacting, always one step behind whatever story she posted. "You have to decide what you want now," my mom said. "Not what looks noble, not what plays well to strangers." She stood, resting a hand briefly on my shoulder. "If you stay with her, this becomes your normal." That future image made my skin crawl in a way I could not ignore. Always waiting to see how she framed me after each disagreement. Always wondering who got the first version of our conversations. Always fearing another anonymous confession that could wreck everything again. After she left, the apartment felt even emptier than before. I sat at the table with my phone and a notepad. For the first time, I started writing my own account chronologically. Not to post, not to argue, just to remember before it got distorted. Dates, times, phrases we actually used, when she nodded, when she hesitated. All of it spilled onto the page in sharp, clipped lines. I realized as I wrote that I was not only defending myself. I was letting go of the idea that this could still be fixed. Halfway through, another text came in from Jess herself. Short, formal, nothing like the usual tone she used with me. "I will return tomorrow with Lauren to collect my remaining belongings." Then one more line: "We should put the ceremony on hold while we figure this out." Staring at those words, I knew something had quietly ended already. The break she wanted was not about healing or reflection anymore. It was positioning, space to keep telling her version without pushback. And sitting there alone, I finally started wondering what I was willing to lose to keep a relationship built on that. The pounding on my door started 15 minutes before the time she gave. I dropped my pen, checked the peephole, saw Jess and Lauren in the hallway. Jess had a duffel on her shoulder, Lauren's phone was already in her hand. I unlocked the deadbolt and felt my heartbeat jump, because today decided everything. Jess stepped inside first without waiting for an invitation. Lauren followed, scanning the room like she was checking for damage. I had stacked Jess's things near the entry in plain sight. Nothing thrown, nothing broken, just sorted piles and a knot in my throat. "Let us keep this quick," Jess said, adjusting the strap on her bag. She did not look around, just aimed straight for the bedroom. Lauren lingered near me, thumb grazing her screen like a reflex. I noticed the camera icon ready on her display, and my stomach clenched. "Are you recording right now?" I asked, staring at the glowing screen. She tilted it away, but not before I glimpsed the red dot. "It is for everyone's safety," she answered, lifting her chin slightly. "Given everything that has been shared, proof is helpful for all involved." That phrase, "everything that has been shared," landed like a quiet threat. They were expecting a scene, maybe even hoping for one they could upload. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my own phone, hit record. If we were collecting evidence now, it would not be one-sided. Jess reappeared from the hallway doorway with an armful of clothes. She moved to the stacks I had made and started sorting silently. Her jaw worked while she folded, then she finally spoke. "I appreciate you grouping my stuff, that is at least considerate." "You are not here just for sweaters," I answered, keeping my voice even. Jess paused mid-fold, then set the fabric down with deliberate care. "I am here to collect my belongings and avoid another blow-up," she replied. "Anything beyond that should go through a mediator or therapist." Lauren nodded approvingly at the word mediator, like this was a plan. I almost laughed because a neutral third party would never hear my version first. They would meet the woman with the shaking voice and carefully chosen phrases. They would probably read her posts before they ever saw my face. "I read your latest update," I said, picking up the printed pages. I had pulled screenshots earlier, not trusting anything to stay up. I slid the stack across the table until it touched her knuckles. "You escalated from awkward and disappointing to ignoring repeated no's." Jess's fingers tightened around the top sheet, crinkling the edge. She did not deny writing it, which told me plenty already. It felt like I was saying no in my head the whole time. She met my eyes, I froze, and you focused on getting through it. "In your head is not what you posted," I answered, pulse jumping. "You wrote repeated no's like you spoke them out loud clearly." I reached for my phone again, opened our messages from that night. Lines of nervous jokes and explicit consent stared back at all three of us. I held the screen near her, scrolling through the conversation slowly. Her own words appeared, telling me she wanted to finally follow through. More texts where she called herself eager and ready, begging me to relax. I heard Lauren suck in a breath behind her, reading those sentences too. Jess swallowed hard, color rising in her face, eyes darting toward Lauren. "I am allowed to change my mind mid-moment, even after saying yes." I nodded once. "You absolutely are," I said, "you just did not tell me then." "What you wrote makes it sound like I steamrolled a verbal refusal." Lauren shifted her weight, stepping slightly between us like a shield. "Perception matters," she said, voice clipped, gaze never leaving mine. "If she experienced it as a violation, that is valid and important." Her hand dropped to Jess's shoulder. "Online language is sometimes dramatic, not literal." "My career is not a fan of dramatic wording," I answered. I pulled up the email from my supervisor and turned the laptop around. "Someone forwarded your thread to my boss, and HR wants a conversation." I watched the realization hit both of them as their expressions shifted. Jess's mouth parted, then closed again, fingers curling around the chair back. "I never mentioned your workplace or your name," she insisted after a beat. "It could be any couple, you are reaching with this company angle." She sounded less sure than before, like the consequences had finally caught up. It is not anonymous when half our social circle knows the details, I replied. Your coworkers know my job title, my family knows your username hints. I tap the table with one knuckle, connect enough dots and my face appears. That was already happening faster than I could respond. Lauren exhaled slowly, biting the inside of her cheek while she thought. Then clear it up with them, she suggested, raising her hands slightly. Tell them you two are working through things and context got lost. She glanced toward Jess. We can say emotions ran high after a tough experience. No more vague corrections, I cut in, catching Jess's eye again. If you backtrack, I want it direct, not softened into a misunderstanding. You wrote words that make me sound like a predator, I continued, throat tight. Either you believe that, or you admit you exaggerated for impact. Jess's face crumpled, then smoothed, like she fought something inside. I do not think you plan to hurt me, she murmured finally. But I felt boxed in, and I knew you would crumble if I violated. So I pushed myself and then felt disgusted later, mostly at myself. That was the closest thing to honesty I had heard since morning. For a second, the anger slid sideways and something like grief took its place. If she had said that 12 hours earlier, this might look different. Instead, she handed that confession to a crowd before handing it to me. You needed sympathy, I said, not accusing, just stating it aloud. You needed someone to tell you it was okay to walk away. She nodded slowly, tears clinging to her lashes but not falling. I needed more than that, she whispered. I needed someone to push me to leave. The unnamed person flashed through my mind again, those initials in my notifications. I opened my contact log and brought up the unfamiliar number from earlier. I called this morning, I said, sliding the screen toward her gently. A man answered, and he knew my first name before I spoke it. Jess flinched, a small involuntary twitch that told me everything. Her gaze dropped to the number, then to Lauren, then back. That is a support friend, she said too fast, like she had practiced. He moderates a space where people talk about complicated relationship situations. Lauren's brows knit together, clearly not fully briefed on that piece. You did not mention that part, she said, turning toward Jess sharply. Jess let out a short hysterical laugh. Because you would judge me, she snapped. You already think I dramatize, I could not add a male confidant. So you vented to a stranger about intimate stuff and used me as content, I summarized. Not just text either, I added, remembering his casual familiarity. He told me you sounded brave for finally naming what happened. He used that word named like this was some big exposure. Recognition flickered in Jess's eyes at the exact word choice. She had heard it before from him, maybe multiple times, maybe nightly. He was there for me when I thought I was going crazy, she muttered. And he never made me feel silly for being upset about consent. The word consent hung between us again, heavier than anything else. I realized this was not just about our bedroom anymore. For her, this had become a case study in coercion and power. For me, it was a fight not to be branded permanently by that lens. I am ending the engagement, I said, hearing how flat my voice sounded. Not loud, not shaking, just final in a way I could not soften. Jess inhaled sharply, like I had slapped her across the face. You are punishing me for being honest about feeling violated, she accused. I am protecting myself from someone rewriting my life in real time, I answered. If I stay, this keeps happening every time you feel trapped or unhappy. Next time there will be more threads, more calls, maybe a formal complaint. I shook my head. I will not stick around as your example of bad consent. Lauren stepped closer to Jess, like she thought I might physically block the door. You breaking it off now confirms half the internet's guesses, she pointed out. They will say you violated the second she stood up for herself. Her eyes burned into mine. You are handing them a narrative they already expect. Maybe, I acknowledged, meeting her stare, but staying would confirm something worse for me. It would tell me I am willing to live under constant implied accusation. Waiting for the next time she needs an audience to validate leaving. That future scared me more than any Reddit judgment ever could. Jess's shoulders sagged, the fight draining as reality settled over us. So that is it, she whispered, voice rougher. We end because of one terrible night. And because I wrote about it instead of swallowing it quietly for you. Her hands trembled as she reached for another box, grip slipping. We end because you trust strangers with our story more than me, I replied softly. And because you portrayed me as dangerous without ever looking me in the eye. If you had come to me with all of this first, maybe we fix it. But you built a public record before I even knew there was a case. Lauren picked up one stack for her, guiding her toward the exit slowly. As they moved, Jess paused near the table where the papers lay. Her gaze lingered on the screenshots, the printed forum pages, the email lines. For a second, she looked almost curious how her own words appeared in ink. I will clarify the bit about ignoring no's, she said quietly. I can say I meant internal resistance, not spoken refusal. It will not erase everything, but it might calm the most extreme replies. She looked at me. That is the most I can offer without betraying myself. It was a compromise that still felt crooked, but it was something. She would not retract the whole tale, only file down the sharpest edge. I understood why, even as it hurt, because she had anchored herself there. If she yanked that anchor up completely, she would question every decision since. After that, I said, grabbing the ring dish from the sideboard. I placed the small band in her open palm, metal cold against her skin. You are free to tell whatever story helps you sleep. I am done being the fiance character in it. Her throat bobbed as she stared at the ring resting in her hand. She closed her fingers around it, building a fist instead of a cradle. Do not post about this, she murmured, not looking up. Please do not turn me into your version of the villain. Temptation flashed through me hard at that moment. I pictured dropping my own thread, Timesta. MPS and screenshots included. Letting an audience dissect her choices the way they dissected mine. For a heartbeat, revenge sounded almost as satisfying as justice. I am not promising anything yet, I said truthfully. Right now I am focused on surviving the fallout you already started. I have an HR meeting tomorrow and relatives whispering behind my back. Once I am out of emergency mode, I will decide how public I go. Jess flinched at the word public, maybe realizing how far this had spread. Lauren tightened her grip on the box she carried, then nodded once. We will be out of your way in 5 minutes, she said. The timeline sounded rehearsed, like they had planned this exit carefully. They made trip after trip to the hallway, arms full each time. Jess moved autopilot, never lingering on anything that might trigger a memory. She did not cry, did not bargain, did not ask to stay. The only sign of emotion was how hard she clenched her jaw. On their last pass, she hesitated at the threshold and glanced back. For a second, the distance between us shrank and the history returned. I did love you, she said softly, voice hoarse, just not in a way that kept me honest. Then she stepped out and the door closed behind them with a final click. Silence dropped over the apartment again, heavier than before. The space where her shoes usually sat looked wrong, too empty and bright. I sank into the nearest chair, hands still buzzing with adrenaline. The absence felt less like loss and more like a storm finally passing. My phone vibrated on the table, dragging me back to the present. A notification from the forum app blinked at the top of the screen. Your post has a new reply, the banner announced, even though I never wrote one. I opened it and saw Jess's account with a fresh entry stamped just minutes ago. She had already shared an update about our breakup, complete with spin. She wrote that she ended things because I could not handle accountability. She mentioned that I threatened to go public with private messages as retaliation. Comments were piling beneath, debating what consequences I deserved next. Reading that final twist, I realized my story was leaving my control. Even this conversation, even my decision to end things firmly, had become material. If I wanted any version out there that resembled what I lived, I would have to speak. And that was the moment I finally understood why people drag everything to Reddit in the first place. The HR manager closed the office door and opened a slim folder. My palms were damp on my knees, my phone heavy in my pocket. On the desk lay a printed screenshot of Jess's longest post. Seeing my bedroom described in bullet points under fluorescent light twisted my stomach. We received an anonymous concern referencing an employee in this department. Her tone stayed professional, but I heard the caution underneath. Several details point toward you, including workplace references and timing. She tapped the paper once. I need to ask some direct questions. She walked through the night fact by fact while I answered. Did I ignore any verbal refusals? No. Did she ever tell me to stop and I continued? No. Did we discuss intimacy beforehand in messages? Yes, and I had them. I slid my phone over and opened the thread with Jess. Lines of text filled the screen, nervous, flirty, and explicit. The manager read slowly, thumb moving, face hard to read. Every time she paused, my heart kicked like it wanted to bolt. This helps, she said, placing the phone down carefully. From a policy standpoint, this appears to be a private relationship conflict. But online commentary that links back here still affects the environment. She folded her hands. You need to keep your side off public forums. That line almost made me laugh because I had not written anything yet. Everyone else had been busy posting, messaging, forwarding their versions. I was the only one still stuck in private notes and screenshots. Hearing her say that pushed something sharp and tired through my chest. I did not start any of this, I answered, voice hoarse. But the story about me keeps growing while I stay silent. She studied me for a moment, searching for ego or deflection. You cannot control how she processes things, she replied, only your response. We wrapped up with a vague warning and no punishment, at least yet. There would be a confidential note, an expectation of professionalism, careful monitoring. I nodded, thanked her, walked out of the room half numb. My job had survived the first wave, but I could feel water rising. In the parking lot, my phone chimed with a new notification. The app icon for that advice site flashed on my screen again. I opened it and saw Jess's username tagged under an edit. She had posted a clarification, just like she promised yesterday. I want to clarify something from my previous post. She wrote that when she me. Entienne repeated no's, she meant internal conflict. She said she froze and wished she had voiced more clearly. She added one line about not accusing me of intentional harm. The reply split almost instantly into two camps. Some thanked her for the nuance, some accused her of backpedaling. A few commenters dragged me anyway, calling it classic damage control. Others started suggesting that maybe the situation was messy, not criminal. I stared at that word messy longer than I expected. It was the first label that felt even slightly accurate. Nothing about that night fit clean categories of good or evil. What scared me was how quickly the world tried to simplify it. A private message icon blinked at the top of the page. I opened it and found a wall of text from a stranger. They linked both her main post and the update with timestamps. Then they asked, do you want to tell your side or not? I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and phone. The apartment still felt too quiet, like it was listening. I opened a blank post window on the same site she used. The title field blinked, waiting, almost daring me to start typing. My fingers hovered over the keys while I thought about every consequence. Friends reading, family reading, coworkers connecting context clues again. HR catching it eventually, calling me back into that room. And Jess refreshing the thread with her support circle beside her. I typed the headline anyway just to see it. I thought everything was fine after finally sleeping with my partner. She told everyone it was a disaster. I stared at it, then edited partner to the real label we had used. The sentence looked truer and worse at the same time. The cursor blinked under the title, pulling me forward. I started breaking the story into scenes instead of defenses. Brunch group chat car posts their visit the ring. Every beat replayed in my head with the rhythm of a confession. As I wrote, messages from my own group chat kept arriving. One friend sent a screenshot of Jess's breakup update with a caption. Is this actually about you or is it coincidence? Another dropped a short line, I am not picking sides but I am listening. That last one hit harder than the outrage. People like spectacle, but a few actually cared about the human underneath. For the first time, I realized I was not just defending myself. I was trying to remind people that there was a person behind every username. I added details that had never shown up in her thread. How she planned the brunch toast before we even drove over. How group messages started while I was still half asleep. How the language changed with each audience, growing harsher, more serious. I did not include screenshots, though I had them ready. Instead, I described the HR meeting and my family's reaction. I wrote about hearing the word safe thrown around without context. How that word sticks, even when you know you never crossed that line. Halfway through, my phone rang with an unknown number. The area code matched the one I had dialed the day before. I let it buzz twice, then answered, bracing for whatever waited. A male voice came through, oddly calm, like this was routine. "This is Mark," he introduced himself, clearing his throat quietly. "You called from this number looking for Jess earlier." I held the phone a little tighter, watching the laptop cursor blink. "You are the one she has been talking to online," I guessed. He did not argue, which told me I had it right. "I moderate a community where she has been processing what happened." His tone stayed measured, almost counselor smooth. "I heard you are thinking about posting your own version." Of course she had told him that too. "She turned our relationship into a serial," I replied, pacing. "I am tired of watching myself get rewritten by people who never met me. I am allowed to speak about my own life." "You are," he conceded, voice still annoyingly neutral. "But you should know how that often comes across to survivors." The word survivors made my grip tighten so hard my knuckles hurt. "We see a lot of men using long explanations to avoid accountability." Accountability, that word again. Somewhere along the way, it had stopped meaning owning your part. It now sounded like code for confessing to a script you never agreed with. I took a breath, forcing my voice to stay even. "I am accountable for being oblivious and scared and clumsy," I said. "I am not admitting to forcing someone who never told me to stop." I checked in, she agreed, then she reinterpreted it for strangers later. "If that makes me a monster in your space, fine, but I will not accept it here." There was a pause, longer than I expected from someone so composed. "You know she genuinely believes her internal reaction matters more than your perception," he replied. "To her, those posts are a lifeline, not entertainment." He cleared his throat. "If you go public, you may trig. Or more panic." Trigger, another word that now belonged to everyone watching us. I thought about my shaking hands in the HR office, my mother's face. No one had used clinical language for them, but the impact felt similar. We were all walking around rattled, hanging different labels on the same earthquake. "Then she needs better help than internet applause," I answered quietly. "Because right now her healing is cutting through my life like a chainsaw. She can have support without putting my name, direct or indirect, on a wanted poster." If he winced at that, I could not hear it. "I cannot control what she writes," he finally said, sounding almost tired. "Just like I cannot control what you decide to post now." He softened his tone slightly. "Whatever you do, do not minimize her fear. Even if you think it is exaggerated, she is living inside it." After we hung up, I sat staring at my half-finished post. I thought about every moment Jess looked genuinely shaken. Her restless hands, the way her voice broke describing feeling boxed in. Those were real, even if the details she shared warped over time. That was the worst part to untangle. Two people living through the same night, telling wildly different stories. Both convinced their version carried more weight, more truth, more pain. In a crowd ready to award medals based on which script fit their worldview. I returned to the draft and changed my approach. I removed one sentence that sounded like a courtroom closing statement. I kept the parts where I looked flawed, anxious, unprepared. I kept the parts where her choices hurt me too. When I finally hit publish, my chest felt tight and hollow. The page refreshed and my post slid onto the front feed. Within seconds, the small counter at the bottom started ticking upward. Upvotes, comments, DMs, the machine spun to life immediately. The first reply accused me of twisting things with polished language. The second said we both sounded immature and should avoid dating anyone. The third was longer, from someone who had been in a similar spiral. They wrote about partners rewriting events online and the slow bleed of trust. I read that one twice, then a third time, breathing stronger. Not because they agreed with everything, they did not. They pointed out where I missed signals, where I should have slowed down. They also called her behavior scorched earth, which nobody had said yet. More responses poured in, some hostile, some skeptical, some unexpectedly kind. A few asked direct questions I did not want to dodge. Did I feel entitled to sex after waiting so long? Did I see her hesitation in hindsight and push anyway? I answered honestly, even when it made me look ugly. Yes, a part of me believed we had earned that moment. Yes, I prioritized finally getting through it over reading every micro-expression. No, I did not think I was harming her, and that ignorance haunts me now. As the thread grew, my phone buzzed with a new text. Jess's name lit up the screen for the first time since she left. Unbelievable, her message read, sharp even without punctuation. You actually dragged strangers into this, after everything you accused me of. I stared at her words, then at my open browser. Her entire history on that site sat only a tab away. She had told hundreds of thousands of people about my body and bedroom. My post did not even mention her username, just the situation. I did what you did, I typed back, then erased it. Anything that sounded like tit for tat would only prove her right. Instead, I put the phone face down and returned to the comments. From now on, I would respond to people who did not want me destroyed. Hours later, after the first wave slowed, my sister called again. I read it, she said without preamble, breath audible through the line. You wrote like you were talking to me, not trying to win. There was relief in her voice and something else, respect. She did not let me off the hook though. You missed big things with her, she pointed out calmly. You treated sex like a milestone you were owed, not a careful step. You also trusted privacy that just was not there anymore. I agreed with all of it, which hurt and helped at once. Owning those mistakes did not mean I accepted the worst labels. It meant I could look at the wreckage without pretending I was perfect. It meant I could walk into future relationships without repeating everything blindly. By the end of the week, both threads settled into the archive churn. New crises took over, new couples became the internet's obsession. My job moved on once HR saw no new complaints or drama. My family stopped whispering and started asking what I wanted next. What I wanted changed from day to day. Some mornings I wanted to disappear offline and never share again. Other times I wanted to screenshot everything and send it to every contact. Most of the time I just wanted to feel like a human again, not a case study. I never did hear from that moderator after our call. Jess kept posting smaller entries for a while, then went quiet too. Friends reported seeing her on dating apps months later, smiling, relaxed. I hoped honestly that whoever she chose next listened better than I did. As for me, I reread my own post one more time before writing this. It was messy, imperfect, full of fear and frustration and regret. But it sounded like me, not the caricature she had built elsewhere. And for the first time since that night, that felt like enough. I thought everything was settled after we finally slept together. In my head, sex meant closeness and commitment and another step forward. For her, it exposed every doubt she had been holding in secret. What broke us was not the night itself, but what she told everyone afterward. Now I know intimacy is not just what happens between two bodies. It is what you do with the story the next morning. Whether you guard it, share it carefully, or feed it to a crowd. That is the part that can follow you forever, long after the deed is done.